Welcome to Sound and Vision, conversations with contemporary artists and musicians about the creative process. Here's the host of Sound and Vision, Brian Alfred.
Sound and Vision is sponsored by Golden Artist Colors. Manufactured in upstate New York, an employee-owned company, Golden makes the best acrylics, oil paints, and watercolors that you can buy. You can find them in your local art store, or you can find them online at goldenpaints.com. Sound and Vision is supported by the New York Studio School, where drawing, painting, and sculpture are studied in depth, debated energetically, and created with passion. The school's full-time programs, a 2-year MFA, and a 3-year certificate prioritize experimental learning and perception. Beginning in fall 2021, the Studio School welcomes artists from around the world to join its inaugural virtual certificate program. Combining the studio-centric emphasis of the school's teaching methods with an individual real-time approach to online learning, this full-time program is designed for serious artists and dedicated aspiring artists who seek to cultivate the studio skills and methods that will prepare them for a lifetime of art making. The priority application deadline is April 30th, 2021. Apply online today at nyss.org. Erika Ranee received her MFA in painting from the UC Berkeley. She's the recipient of a New York Foundation of the Arts Fellowship in Painting, an AIM Fellowship from the Bronx Museum, and was granted residence at the Skowhegan School of Painting and Sculpture. She was an AIRspace resident at the Abrons Arts Center in 2009 and was awarded a studio grant from the Marie Walsh Sharpe Art Foundation in 2011. Her work has been exhibited widely in New York at the Bronx Museum, in the Last Brucennial, BRAvinLee Programs, David and Schweitzer Contemporary, and at the Southampton Arts Center. In the summer of 2018, her work was featured in concurrent group shows at Geoffrey Young Gallery in Great Barrington, Massachusetts, at Lesley Heller Gallery in New York City, at Klaus von Nichtssagend Gallery in New York City, and at Freight+Volume in New York City, as well as 2 concurrent solo exhibitions at Ground Floor Gallery in New York and BRIC Project Room in New York. In early 2019, her work was featured in a solo show at Lesley Heller Gallery, and later in 2019, her work was on view in a group exhibition at Wild Palms in Dusseldorf, Germany, and in a solo show at Freight+Volume. Currently, her work can be viewed in a group exhibition at Stephen Harvey Fine Art Projects in New York City on the Lower East Side. There are 2 solo ventures and several group shows planned for New York and Connecticut in 2021. She works in New York. I sat down and talked with Erika about music, bird watching, materiality, and much more. Here's our conversation. You'll be impressed with how little preparation I've done for this interview.
Well, that was gonna be my next question. I'm like, I guess we're just gonna dive right in, no prep, and just take it from there.
Well, I mean, for me, there's so many studio visits with friends over the decades that I've done, and we talk about day-to-day stuff. It's different. And then every time you hear an interview with an artist, I feel like there's like 20 questions that people choose from.
Yeah, that's true.
What I mean?
That's true.
There's so much more interesting about these people that you never really get to hear that stuff.
Right.
So my mission was to just say, hey, well, sometimes I'll get a comment from someone and be like, well, you didn't really talk about their work the whole time. Or like, you didn't talk about this painting or that. And I was like, yeah, but that you can get that.
Exactly.
You know what I mean? You can get it online.
Exactly.
And like, how do you know what this artist listened to when they were 8th grade and how that shaped their future? So that's kind of the idea. I'm acting as though this whole thing was like super planned out, but it wasn't.
Well, that's
just kind of
that's refreshing.
Yeah, I mean, it's for me because you're driving. How long is it? 5 hours.
5 hours. It's on a good day, which is rare. It's 3.5. So it's like 200 miles. So yeah, I actually enjoy driving. I mean, it's something I don't even, once in a while I'll put NPR on, but I'm going through 3 states and it changes, and I'm too lazy to find the NPR station for Connecticut and then the NPR for Massachusetts.
Right.
So basically the radio goes off. I have a radio in my car. With a CD player.
I thought you were going to say it's a ham radio.
There used to be a cassette player in there, but I finally replaced it. But yeah, I mean, I drive an old truck, 1992 black pickup truck. And it's just my little home away from my apartment. But it's just so meditative, no sound, no voices, no music. And I'm just looking and driving. And so I look forward to my long drives. Plus, it's nice to see that transition from city to country, and the air changes. And then when I'm coming back, it's just a different energy. Even my driving changes. Like I drive like a crazy woman when I first arrive in the country, because I've got all that city energy. And then and then when
it's hard to shake it,
right?
Right?
And then I remember driving. I was almost home, and it was like kind of in a little town, but you really had to slow down. And I was doing I wanted to do a good 60 in a 40. And I was stuck behind this little old lady who was doing about 25, and she was making me crazy. So I passed her like really fast, and there's a police car coming the opposite direction. And I was like, oh gosh, I know I did it. I ruined my little chance for a perfect arrival. And of course he did a U-E. I slowed down anyway. I just pulled over to anticipate him, but he's like, wow. And I said, you know what, officer, I'm sorry. I just came from New York City. I'm just a little revved up right now, and I apologize. It'll take me a few days to come down. He was laughing at me. He gave me a ticket, but I deserved it. I deserved it.
You're like, it's the city's fault.
It is. It's the city's fault.
It's the city. What am I supposed to do? But it's funny because, like when my parents would visit the city, which, isn't very frequent, they would be amazed at that energy of driving.
Yeah.
But I tell them, if you don't drive that way,
right,
you're going to get trampled. It's like if you go to Times Square in peak Times Square and you walk slow, like Sunday walking, you're going to get trampled. You are. So you have to adapt.
You do. You have to adapt. I love driving in the city. It gets any aggression, any intense energy I have, I know how to maneuver. I've been driving here for, nearly 30 years. Yeah. But it's funny, conversely, when I'm driving back to the city from the country, I feel like I've just left the Caribbean, like I'm like, yeah, how you doing? What's going on? People honking behind me because I'm going too slow, sitting at the light a little too long, daydreaming. So it's fun to have both sides of my personality come out accordingly.
Yeah, but you do have to adapt to the city quicker.
You do.
Than you do to the country.
You have to be on it right away.
You come out of the Lincoln Tunnel or the Holland Tunnel and you take that, the country approach.
Oh boy.
You learn quick. You got to hit the speed.
I'm on the cross Bronx and they are like whizzing around. I'm like, oh, okay, back to business here.
Exactly. Yeah. What's funny is my family, we travel to Japan pretty much every year. And I bring back that energy when I come back to New York. And that sort of understanding, more like communal, like, not New York energy. And it's amazing how quickly I have to flip the switch. I want it to work.
Right.
But it just doesn't work.
It won't. You have to switch it. I love Japan. Speaking of Japan, I'm a bit of a Japanophile, especially during this COVID period. I get my news from NHK. I don't want to watch, American media, and my childhood best friend was Japanese. And nice. So from 1st through 8th grade, I had a Japanese sister. They moved away to California. Her dad became president of CIT, first Asian president. So they moved to Pasadena, and I was so sad. But we just met up not long ago after 25 years. She came to the city with her boyfriend, and it was great just to see the same person. But I learned a lot about Japanese culture, and I still don't wear shoes in my house.
I know. Yeah. It's funny because I live in a Japanese family, and when you see people who do wear shoes in the house, at this point, like it makes me feel really
it's
uncomfortable.
Same here. I don't know. And it's funny because if ever the super has to come in here, I put the sign up like no shoes. And he's like, oh gosh, here we go with this lady.
Yeah, I had guys carrying a washing machine up the steep steps upstairs, and they were in their socks, and it was so funny. But I was like, sorry guys, you got to do it.
I love that. That's so funny.
Seemed a little dangerous, but I have insurance.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it stays with you. I love it though. So I have a little bit of that history. Plus I've been to Japan as well. I traveled there for, I'd say 2.5 weeks by myself after college graduation.
Oh, nice. Just a little sort of post-school,
I
see the world
wanted
thing?
to go, and none of my friends were able to go. One friend met me towards the end of the trip, but I started in Tokyo, and then I went to Kyoto. Then I went to this really interesting, like, I'd say it was like working class town called Beppu, and it was just known for having this hot springs amusement park type thing.
Nice.
I didn't want to do that, but I just went all over the place. I remember the hotel I stayed in Kyoto. I met a wonderful woman who was the supervisor of housekeeping, and she took to me somehow. I guess she saw I was traveling alone, and she didn't speak any English, and I didn't speak any Japanese, but we bonded, and I ended up on a train going to her home because she wanted to show me that she was the master of tea ceremony and playing the koto. And so I'm sitting in the stranger's apartment, and she's showing me these videos, and she was so kind, and she took me to her favorite noodle place. I mean, I love to travel like that, just with no plans, meeting people, just, I mean, you know, within reason of safety measures, of course, but Japan is so safe.
It's,
you know, and you can
safe.
practically eat off the sidewalks. It's so clean and safe. But yeah.
Just like Brooklyn.
Just like Brooklyn.
The litter situation, that's another adjustment when you come back, because you're like, there you can't even find a trash can. Like there's just no trash. There's no trash, and then there's no trash cans. You come back here and it's like you can't throw something on the ground and not hit other adjacent trash.
But we love New York, right?
Oh, that's the charm.
That is the charm. I love this city. I love it. I mean, I can't get it out of my blood now. I mean, I was raised in the country, you know, my childhood and teen years right up to college were spent in rural Massachusetts, which always surprises people. But it was a real agrarian society, tons of farmland, and mostly milk farms. And then there's tobacco, a lot of tobacco farms, which are gorgeous structures, those barns where they hang the tobacco. But yeah, it's a beautiful part of the country, and that's in my blood too. So I need both. I need
tobacco.
No tobacco.
Just kidding.
No, but I need country and I need city. I need both of those environments to stay balanced and centered. And I'm lucky to have access to both, you know.
Yeah, definitely. Wait, did you spend all your time in rural areas growing up?
Yeah, no, I mean, I was born in Los Angeles, but when I was 6, we moved to Massachusetts. And my mother found this farmer who was trying to sell his place, and it was a broken down farmhouse with 2 big barns. And I mean, she was in her 20s. She built this thing up as a family home. It really is just like a normal family home, nothing fancy, just very comfortable. I mean, there are 5 kids, you know, you need a lot of space for that. So she grew up in Virginia and wanted that same feeling of what her grandparents had provided. They were farmers, and she liked that feeling. So that's where we stayed. And I went to public school in Amherst, and we would drive like 45 minutes to Amherst. We lived far away from it. And
that's a long commute.
Tell me about it. And I'm not a morning person, so it was like 5 a.m. every morning. Oh gosh. I was so happy to go away to high school so I could like sign up for the 11 o'clock classes.
Right.
To this day, I'm nocturnal. I'm not a morning person at all.
Well, wait, so do you think that's where your love of, well, I don't know if you would have loved it, but your comfort of being in a car might have come from those
maybe
early
so.
trips?
Then, well, it was funny because the car rides were tumultuous because my brother and I fought every day both ways. So we were both kind of hot-headed kids, and I'm the old.
I mean, that's part of it, right? That's
I
to
know.
be expected, I guess.
And we both have the same temper. I lost him like 24 years ago, but he was 4 years younger than I. So here I am, the oldest sister, really bossy, and he was like the brother, the male, like, you're not the boss of me. So every day, and we had these big afros, 70s. Yeah. Oh,
Just like here.
and it was, nothing, no blood shed or anything. It's just like pulling hair and kicking and all this both ways. I mean, one time my mom threw us out of the car and left us. Yeah.
Really?
Oh yeah. Well,
Left you
this
on
is
the
a
side?
country road. So she had just had it. She's like, both of you get out.
See, those are the kind of the great lessons, I feel like, that these days you would just be thrown in jail if you did that. But I feel like back then that teaches a good lesson.
It's
like, look, if you kids act up, you're going to walk
That's
home.
right.
And it's a long walk.
We were about 2 miles away from home, but of course she came to pick us back up. But it was like, we weren't sure for a minute, like, is mom coming back? And even so, we were still fighting. We were on opposite sides of the road, like, just yelling at each other. We got it together when she came back. She came back like 5 minutes later, but we were like, whew, okay, we won't do that.
But that fear kind of...
It got in our heads. We're like, we knew where to go, where to walk, but it was like, oh, this is bad. We were bad.
Well, in growing up, I mean, were you always artistic or creative?
I was.
Were you a drawer, or were you doing creative things around outside? I imagine you spent a lot of time outside too.
That was my thing. I was the kid who came home from school, and I had this beautiful German Shepherd dog, and he and I would go for walks for like 2 or 3 hours. So from the time I got home from school to dinner time, I was allowed to just go by myself walking through the woods. And I was such a nerd. I mean, I was collecting birds' nests, deserted birds' nests. I would make studies of the eggs and the type of birds. And I still have this book by National Geographic. It was a bird book, which I loved because they had a little vinyl record in there of bird sounds. So I was able to make connections with all the Northeast birds. So I was just so into that. And then I was collecting bugs. I was studying bugs. I entered my bug collection in a science fair and won a little prize. I mean, I loved that stuff. I wanted to maybe be a botanist or a zoologist or an ornithologist. But I was always creative. So I would, I wrote a little book about whales, and I wanted to do it my way. And it was just like using certain paper and making the drawings. So the creative side of me was always integrated in with the interest in science, I suppose. But yeah.
Now, do you think it's still, not to jump forward too quickly, but do you think that informs your work today?
Yeah.
There's some sort of physical, outdoor, tactile relationship?
Absolutely. I mean, even the alchemy of the materials that I use. Shellac is my signature material, and I love that it's made from beetles, the real pure shellac anyway. And I love how I mix certain things with the shellac to create a crackling effect. So I get these surfaces that evoke nature to me, like rock formations or lava or even mud, dirt, anything like that. I love that. And actually, I mean, I used to paint nature scenes, and I've kind of gotten in. I mean, I'm in this show that opens today at Stephen Harvey, and that one, I'm starting to see that I'm incorporating nature as something that you can read literally. Whereas, I've been doing purely abstract for a while. And in this, you can see sort of leaves and vegetation hanging. It's done, I don't paint it on purpose. It's just when I'm pouring the paint, it's starting to shape into natural forms. So it's always in me. I can see the country in me, and then I have a little city in me because I've been using spray paint, but I've even been turning the spray paint into more of a natural look. So I'm not trying to do graffiti,
Right.
I don't know.
It's funny though how that those connections to when you're growing up and being creative, I feel like no matter how hard you try to suppress it, in one way, shape, or form, it comes out in the process. Maybe not sort of visually,
Right.
but just even the way you approach
Right.
the physicality or the materiality of whatever
Right.
it is. You know what I
Exactly.
mean?
I mean,
Like I remember growing up painting there was like a rectory, like a church rectory,
mm-hmm.
like catty corner to where we lived. And, I lived in a part of Pittsburgh where it was like the houses were connected. They were houses, but they were like, there was like a foot in between each house. And in Pittsburgh, for some reason, it was like church, bar, church, bar. That was like the, the demographic. Yeah, it was like that. And so we had this huge rectory in a church, and I would paint that church in like Fauvist colors or something.
Nice.
And my mom has that hanging in that same house in Pittsburgh. And when I go back, I'm like, my work is kind of that still.
Yeah.
In a way.
Are you still,
like it doesn't get that far away.
Yeah, because you're still a Fauvist in a sense, right? Maybe.
Well, no, I think maybe flat. I use like flat colors in a sense, and I think there's a connection between like like I grew up watching like Bugs Bunny and Tom and Jerry and stuff like that, and I love that Chuck Jones style.
Yeah.
And that to me, growing up, that excited me visually. Like Roadrunner cartoons, the landscapes were amazing to me.
Yeah.
And I think that's just, and I grew up with Warhol around all the time.
Yeah.
So none of that felt foreign or felt like quote unquote like pop. It just felt like, oh, that's kind of the way you can make images.
Right. Yeah.
And it's still there.
I was completely attracted to flat, cartoony art when I first started. I mean, because I was never trained to draw. I mean, I was making copies. I was trying to copy advertisements, images, portraits, just to get the hang of it. But I was more of a craft person. I came through, my creativity started with craft. I mean, I was always on a sewing machine or sewing something, cutting. I tried knitting, but things would evolve from what was supposed to be a scarf into like some weird other shape, which I would end up using as a collage element. So, the failure of that led to something else that was more interesting to me. But yeah, I loved flatness, and that has carried through a lot of my work. Even now I look at things that are flat with like these blocks of bright color and I just get excited, Yeah.
Yeah.
And I remember in grad school, they were always getting at me like, where are your layers? Where's the depth in your imagery? How can we see through this other layer? And I was like, I like flat. Is there something wrong with that?
I got the same deal. And like, for me, it was always, where's the emotion? Like this is like unemotional, because for some reason, once Jackson Pollock did what he did, that was the only way to define emotion. And, almost like the only way you can write an emotional or a heartfelt song is if you like turn the distortion on the guitar up to like, 8 or something. You know what I mean? Like it had that vibe.
Yeah.
It seems a little myopic, but I didn't know better. So I was, but I did my thing.
Yeah. Or they were always like, where are you in this? Where are you? You need to be more personal. I'm like, I'm okay with what I'm doing here. This is me on a canvas.
I made it.
Yeah, I made it. Like by virtue of that fact, I think that's me. Some people don't understand that. Or more political. Where's your blackness? Where's your woman? Like, all right. You know what? It's all in there. Just trust me. It's all in there because I made it. I'm a black woman. Okay.
I mean, that's such the unfair thing about like content when it comes to people is that it's almost, it is like stereotyping just to say like, oh, well, you're like, here's the 3 kinds of imagery that we feel like that you're supposed to make.
Right.
which is like ridiculous. But with, you know, if you're just a white dude, like you can do whatever, like no one ever says like, you know, maybe you should be making more work about your generic whiteness in America. No one says it. You just do what you do. But like if you're Japanese, it's like, oh, well, where's the cartoon anime stuff?
Right.
I mean, come on.
Exactly.
You know? But that so exists. Like it
does very much so. I am making sure I am not that professor, you know, who's going to say any of that. I mean, also because that I've experienced it, and it's not, you know, I just kind of roll my eyes. I don't allow it to get me angry. It's just that it's like, come on, just think outside the box here, okay? Just think outside the box, and I don't care if you know what I am when you look at my work. I want you to take something away from it. My work is intuitive. And I want you to pick up things and maybe discover things I didn't even know, you know, about it. But, you know, I've had dealers saying, you know, wanting to kind of describe my work and put it in this folder of urban, which is just another way of saying she's black, you know, just because I've used spray paint. And I'm like, okay. Is this how you're thinking? You know, after all this work I'm doing, that's all you can zero in on. And that's how you're marketing my work. But, you know, people just have to learn. I'm not here to teach anybody, you know.
It's laziness, though. I feel like it happens throughout the response of any kind of creative media. It's like if you think about music, like if you read like criticism or people who are describing music, it's so kind of like, I mean, I get it. Part of it is for categorization, or like, you know, it's like, oh, well, that's country music or that's hip hop or whatever it is. But there's so much nuance that just out of laziness, people just say, oh, well, that's this kind of music, or you know what I mean? It has to be kind of categorized. I think, unfortunately, it's part of human nature to where you just will associate things. It's like some sort of like
you've got a
thing wired within.
Yeah. I think maybe just to make it easier for you to understand or compute something. I don't know why we do that. It's so funny when you talk about music though, because if you look through my collection of music, I run the gamut. I have a little bit of metal, you know, I mean, I've also got bossa nova, I've got hard rock, soft rock, soul, funk, even some country music, old school though, not the new stuff.
Like the old Hank Williams stuff.
You know, I need a lot of variety in my life and on many levels. So that just keeps me excited and, you know,
I agree.
You know, I can't just stay stuck on one type of music. The only thing I will admit I haven't quite caught on to is rap and like hardcore heavy metal rock that just makes my head hurt. But I have Metallica. I have a Metallica CD, you know.
And it's pretty heavy metal.
Yeah, that gets heavy, but there's something soulful about them too. So that's where I can cling on to that. But that's it. I only have one. And I don't know when I last listened to it, but there was one time when I needed it while I was painting. I just needed that energy to get through the painting, one little portion of it.
I'm right there with you. I mean, I did grow up on rap music, so that to me is part of it. But I was never, a lot of my friends were into heavy metal, and I was never into that. I was more into like indie rock stuff.
Yeah.
But if you have that itch of like wanting to like, you know, that Metallica, like that aggressive itch, there's a band called Shellac, which which is Steve Albini, who's a producer who recorded like Nirvana and PJ Harvey and all sorts of people. But that band they scratch that itch. It is so raw. Really? I think it's way more hard than someone like Metallica, because Metallica is more like an illustration of like evil or darkness.
Maybe that's why
Shellac is just
connect.
It's raw, like, you know.
Okay, well, I like hearing that word raw. Anything raw, no matter what it is, might hook me, because
it's usually pretty good.
Yeah,
right?
I like purity of sound or of composition.
Definitely.
But yeah, no, I mean, I need, and then also, you know, I could do a painting and listen to the same damn album for 5 hours straight. Like I just need to get into that zone, like that hypnotic zone of
Definitely
hearing, let's say Nirvana. Like if I could just listen to that, or I either recently there's just this cheap little like Bob Marley CD I got for like $3, and that just was on repeated loop for 6 hours in this one little corner where I had to do tiny work, tiny detailed work. So it's funny when I see the paintings, the song just bounces right back into my head. Right. I'll just hear it. It'll just be right there, the soundtrack right there.
Yeah, like the rhythms in the painting.
Yeah, I mean, it's like I'll look at a certain area of the painting and I'm like, oh, okay, that was, the whatever song I was listening to at the time. It'll just click right on. It's like a weird connection that happens.
Yeah, I do that. Part of the whole podcast, I talk a lot about music, and I used to play music. I still play, but I used to be in bands and stuff. And it's such a big thing for me to like tie together parallels between music and art, because it's always been that way in my life. But, that idea of like going through parts of a painting that are methodical and take a long time, and I'll put on something like Tony Allen, like a 14-minute long song with a shuffle beat that just goes and goes. I mean, that to me, it works so well. But then like if I want something chaotic and I put on like, Ornette Coleman or something, and then it just makes sense, and it's like I'll curate sound to the kind of dynamics that I want within a painting.
Right. I mean, speaking of Ornette Coleman, jazz is really good for me when I want to get started on a painting or when I'm in the middle of it. For some reason, Charlie Parker is perfect. It hits the right note because it just keeps moving, but it's also kind of light and then also complex. And my painting just looks so good after I've listened to any Charlie. So I keep Charlie on the side to get started. When I'm mellow, I'll go into whatever is like low key. And then of course, Jimi Hendrix is also good for good energy for me to get started. And music is important. I mean, I have recently, now that I've started slowly getting back into the studio, I've been into just really listening to nothing. Just sounds, because I'm right near the BQE. So I even enjoy hearing these trucks just whizzing by, just feeling that rhythm of the city. And then when I don't want to hear that, I just told my students last night, I was listening to bird songs again. I have a CD of bird chirping. And and birds have come back into my life, become important again. When I'm in the country, I've got my little feeders and I'm watching them with binoculars and walking around. So it's sort of full circle now. But music is very important in the studio. Some kind.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah. It's funny. There's two ornithologies you brought up already, between bird and birds.
Yeah.
I've had like a huge bird influence. When my son was young, we got an app that would sing all the calls. So I learned all the bird calls.
Wow.
Of like Northeast birds. And then I actually did a kid's book that was the birds of New York, where I would draw out like photographs that I took from around New York and put a different bird in each thing. It never got published, but I just basically made it for him.
Oh, wow.
But it's really, the sonics of birds is so intriguing once you start studying it.
Yeah.
And like when I go out into the country, I can hear the different, not all of them, of course, but I hear a lot of those different kinds of birds, and it's pretty cool to like decode, like, oh, there's a cardinal, like a mile over there, or there's a tufted titmouse in that tree.
Right,
It's kind of fun to
exactly.
do that stuff.
What's interesting? I just recently, in the past few years, realized how beautiful robin songs can be.
Yeah.
They just have such a beautiful warble, and then the other day, a couple of weeks ago when I was in the country, I heard something I've never heard before. It was such a beautiful song. And I was looking up there. I'm like, what are you? It was hiding, though. I don't know what it was. But yeah, I love that. I'm coming back to that. You should try to publish that book, though. It would be very popular now. Everyone's into birds.
Yeah, it was a fun project. I kind of like, I printed it out nicely and I gave it to him. And that was, we did it. I guess that was the main reason I wanted to do it. It wasn't,
that's important.
It would be cool to have it out there, I guess. But yeah, it's like, in that whole process, I think what triggered it was there was a mockingbird that always used to like land on the antenna of the apartment across the street.
Oh, wow, cool.
And it would do its songs, you know what I mean? And do that like kind of like flipping circle flying thing. It would do. But it's amazing to me that they copy other bird songs to impress their potential mates.
It's true. I mean, there's some birds
cool?
Are so fascinating. Just, you know, when you watch those David Attenborough, you know, docs about birds of paradise and all the different things that they do and the dances they do. And then there's what is it called? The bowerbird that builds this beautiful nest to entice the female. And they find all these different little shapes and that match in color coding everything.
I don't know about
the bowerbird. Oh my God, you got to check it out. They build like a little hat, like thatch, like tent or something out of twigs into a beautiful shape. And then they actually go and find these objects, like maybe shiny beetles will all be blue and they'll have the blue patch here. And then there'll be like a red pile of like, everything has to be red. And then over here, maybe something white. And the one.
So they're making art.
Yeah, they're making art. You got to check it out. And then, you know, the female comes and checks it out. If she likes it, she stays. If not, she's off to the next hut. But yeah, no, I don't know. Birds save me too. I have lots of birds all around when I'm looking.
I was going to ask where you are. Like, it must be good for that.
Yeah.
Right?
Oh, it's great. I mean, I had even in the city, the birds are here. Like I had the mourning dove family. I mean, I have those spikes on my window to keep the pigeons away because, you know, I want to open my window and I want pigeon poop smells flowing into my bedroom. But the one bad blizzard, the part of the spikes broke off. I'd say about this much space was left open.
Mm-hmm.
And
that's all they
mourning
need.
dove found it. I saw a little twig up here. I'm like, what is that? And then this little family parked themselves, and it was great because it was right during COVID, when it first, you know, March, April, we were in the throes of COVID, and here was this little family. It was like my little nature break every day. I would just check in on them, see when the egg was hatched, and then another, and it was a sort of a saving grace for me. It was something for me to really focus on while I was stuck in my apartment.
I guess it was like having pets.
It was, and I don't want pets. I don't want any pets. I'm not good with having anything live moving around in my space. I'm a true loner. I love to be by myself, and it's just, you know,
no pets, nothing.
By design, I don't have children. I don't have pets. I have plants. I can deal with plants.
They don't move too rapidly, so you're safe there.
unless I turn on a fan.
Right.
There's no movement. So yeah, it's nice that they were outside and wild. I like that kind of pet.
Yeah. Well, so to go back to your, you know, moving from creativity when it was involved in your life early on to like, when did it become the thing that you thought, okay, this is what I want to do? Like where you got into it? I
was kind of late into it. Like in college, I was a government major with a public policy concentration. And I tried taking some art classes. I was an art major, but my counselor didn't have me down as such. So I wasn't able to get into the studio art classes. So I was able to take a lot of art history classes and maybe one or two craft courses, like, you know, silversmithing, and this class that was called a gut course. Anything that was easy was called a gut course at Wesleyan. And so I took this gut course that they called cut and paste. They nicknamed it cut and paste. It's like this older guy, and he just like cut up pieces of paper and collaged them. You had like guys from the football team in there. So
the bar was low.
The bar was low, but I was like, at least it's something I could do, something creative. That's when I felt like I had an itch for it, you know. And I made some pieces. I made these collage pieces, which were, again, flat, kind of cartoony. I was creating these characters. And I thought, oh, and by that time, my counselor realized that I could be a double major with art, which was late in the game. So he enrolled me in the thesis program for the art majors, and I made paintings based on these little cut and paste things, and it really took off. Everyone was like, "Wait, you're an artist?" And I was like, "I don't know. Am I? I'm a government major. I'm going to be a lawyer." So my senior year, I went abroad. I studied abroad in Paris, and I took a couple of classes at Parsons while I was at the American College trying to get my credits towards my government degree. And this one class, I don't remember the professor's name, but he made us build a painting from scratch. So we had the wood we had to shape into the stretchers. We had to have, really nice linen canvas. We cooked up rabbit skin glue, and treated the canvas. And I was like, what? This is what goes into making a painting? Excuse me. And we had to make our own oil paints and put them in the tubes. And that was it for me. That's when
I was like, from scratch.
Everything. And I'd never made a painting. I was like, what is this? And I had so much fun with that. And that's when the light bulb went off that I want to do this. And so, I I let my parents know that I was not going to be a lawyer. I was going to be an artist. And I called them from Paris, and it was like total silence on the other end of the line. And I thought, hello, is there something you guys
Is this on?
But that was it. And I had total support, which was good. So when I graduated from Wesleyan, since I didn't have much experience in studio classes, after I got my degree from Wesleyan, I enrolled at School of Visual Arts because I wanted to get the full on thing. So I only had to stay there for 2.5 years. They were able to transfer credits. And then from there I went to grad school. So it was all set in motion, really pretty much from Paris.
Yeah, this is probably an impossible question to answer, but do you think if you were introduced to painting in a different way to where it was like, okay, here, you just go buy your stretcher and here's your paints and tubes, do you think that detachment from some of the craft-like qualities that you probably responded to, because you said that you do like, kind of like, the craft side of that stuff, do you think it would have hit the same way?
I think so. Maybe not as quickly and passionately, but it's funny because my process, I run away from building anything now. I mean, I don't want to do any of that. Also, the canvas we built was about yay big. It was small, and I love working large scale, and I've certainly built my fair share of canvases and stretching everything, and I really hate it. I just don't. I'm no longer a purist about making it from beginning to end. So that part of me has changed, but I liked knowing the process. I think that was the most fascinating thing, I liked doing it too because it was part of the class project and it was a contained environment with instruction. But no, I think it would have hit me the same way, like using paint, just that viscosity, something about paint does it for me, and I don't paint from a tube, I pour. So I love that whole action of pouring. I get my water bottles and I cut them in half and I use that and I just pour and pour. I just love pouring. I think I like looking at water flowing. So I want
it's hypnotic.
Yeah, it is. And then I just let it dry. Sometimes it'll roll over into corners I don't want it to, but it allows me to lose control. Because I like control. I like to harness things, and I can't do that in the way that with my technique, And I like that relinquishing of control. That's a big part of my process, really, every day. when I'm painting. I'll do something to force myself not to try to control. And then in the end of the painting, I'm like tweaking things, getting those lines, just those edges, just perfect. I don't use tape for lines, for clean lines. So I'm just like this weirdo will take that sponge brush about 100 times until it's just right. And probably only I can see it, No,
it's almost like you'll let it start loose and like that's your improv area, but then at the end to seal the deal, you're going to
I'll get in there,
like define
and I guess that's both sides of me, just like city country. I've got the loose side, and then I've got the controlling perfectionistic side too.
Right. Have you used those paint? They're not paint markers, but they look like a big fat Sharpie, but there's acrylic paint in it.
No.
And like it's got a foam tip to it, but you can basically paint those lines.
Yeah.
But it's not like a paint marker where it looks like, different.
Right.
Like it looks kind of like a marker. This is just paint that comes out, but it's kind of beautiful, the line work you can get and the cleanness of it.
Okay, yeah, I got to look into that because I like those tools.
Yeah, I'll send you a link.
That'd be great. Yeah, no.
I don't use them too much, but I have sometimes, like I'm working on paper, and I'm amazed at just how crisp but flowing. Like you want that good flow.
Yeah,
you don't want it to be like something where you're shaking thing with a metal ball. And
exactly,
it's the worst.
That is the worst.
Yeah, this is just like because you've mentioned you use foam brushes too.
I do.
Right?
I'm like almost 90% foam brush.
Yeah, I'm keeping Gen Manufacturing in business. They make all those foam brushes, but these things have that foam tip to it.
Oh yeah,
so you get a nice smooth line.
Yeah, you sold me when you said foam. Foam is key.
I really like foam brushes.
Yeah, I love your clean lines too. I'm like, how the heck is he getting that so clean?
Well, it's mostly tape. I mean, I do use a lot of tape.
The reason why I don't use tape really is because I don't really know how to. But I feel like if I did, I would just be going nuts with it.
It's the worst. It's like crack. I mean, you can't.
I know that's what I think is going to happen.
When I have students who start, I'm like, be careful. Like, you gotta commit to this, and you're gonna have to know when to push back.
Right.
But I think in reproduction, my work looks like it's all super clean and taped off. But when you see it in person, there's a lot of hand stuff going on in there.
That's good. Yeah.
But when the internet and reproductions,
I know it just flattens everything out. Even my work flattens out, and I have a lot of surfaces, and build up on my paintings that you don't see at all in a photograph, and then people see in person like, whoa, look at all these like cracks and crevices and tears and all this stuff. So yeah,
I mean, that's the disparity between in life and not. The first show I saw in New York when I was an undergrad, I came to New York and I saw Carol Dunham and Larry Pittman 2-person show, and the Larry Pittman paintings, I was like, I had seen those in art magazines in reproduction, but I was like, oh my god, like this surface is insane.
Right.
Look at all the it flattens out, but in person it's it's perplexing just how complicated that very, very thin surface is.
That's right. Yeah.
But it blows your mind, and it opens up the whole realm of like the subtleties that can happen within that very, very thin space.
Yeah, and then they feel like paintings, instead of these flattened reproduced images. Yeah, no, I think I first saw Larry in I think it was a Whitney Biennial in the early days.
Yeah.
Because I came here in 1988, and I was just so in love with going to see art. We don't have that in rural Massachusetts, so it was
you're surrounded.
It was such a gift. I was like, oh, look at all these museums and galleries. Everything was located in Soho. Yeah. And so it was easy to get there and just walk around from gallery to gallery. And it was not far from SVA. So it was just like going from class, check out. I mean, I have to credit Marilyn Minter. She was one of my professors at SVA, and she was the one who assigned us to go out to galleries,
Made you do it?
Every week we had to write about the show. We had to select. She would say, just pick some shows and write about them. And that was our assignment. And that was when I really started going out to check out the art. And it's funny because I find that, I teach art, and I find that a lot of the students just don't take the initiative to see any art. They don't know the contemporary artists. And I think there need to be, maybe some courses that give you the rundown on that, because it's hard, when you're a teenager to really push yourself. But I'm like, you're in New York City. You're the center of the art universe.
It's not far
Get
away.
out there, go to the galleries.
commute.
Yeah, so I've kind of copied Maryland, and I would make, my students go out to museum shows and write about it. So
yeah. No excuse if you live in the city.
No
but I
excuse.
think this as a teacher, it's like, I think these days though, the currency of contemporary work has changed. Like, it's not just the gallery, it's Instagram, and it's like,
Right.
people are looking at people, it's been democratized in a way, as far as like the way that the influence of who they're looking at approaches their eyes, where, we would have to usually go to a gallery website, or just go to New York if you didn't live in New York, and see like walk up West Broadway back in like the early
Right.
90s. And that was your education,
Right.
but now it's like, sometimes I'll preach like, you guys should really know who these artists are. They're like, people who are held in high regard,
Right.
and people think their work is really important. And, and they're just like deer in headlights, like, what, wait, what?
I know
Are they on Instagram? They're not on Instagram? No, whatever.
I know. Well, I've actually taken to, now I have to make sure that they're actually going, because you can go on the internet, find images of the work, see the show all on the website.
See the show.
Yeah, see the show.
Right.
I want them to go to the show. Well, not now, of course. I can't. I'm not
Right.
making anyone do anything outside of.
No one's going
Yeah,
anywhere.
right. But I would actually ask them, I was like, well, you have to take a selfie. I want you to take a selfie, and if you're going to a museum, I want to see your ticket stubs. I mean, now I have to just like
Proof.
make sure there's proof that they've actually physically seen the show, and not just looking on the internet, because they would, make photocopies. They would Xerox images from the online,
Right.
paintings, and then they would collage them as if they had photographed the work at the show. And then I was like, you didn't go to the show.
It's almost more work.
It is.
Like, I could imagine them photoshopping themselves in a selfie.
I know. I was
It's not
looking.
hard
I
to
was
do.
even got to that point. I was like, is this photoshopped? Is this the real deal? So sad that I had to do all that work just to verify that they actually went
Ugh.
to the show.
It's so emblematic of like technology complicating our lives in like a micro scale of like, just go see the show. It'll take you like a half an hour and save us all hours of work of decoding whether you
Right,
actually saw the
right.
thing or not. And who knows, you might actually like to see the work in
This
person.
is the
It might-
point.
Right.
And like we were saying,
No.
you have to see things in real life, like it's the difference from seeing Larry Pittman, in a photograph, and actually seeing the subtleties of the thin application. You can see the paint happening. And that's what I want the students to recognize, those differences.
Which makes total sense, is completely logic. But then I worry, that part of me worries that like we're just old. And
Right.
People are saying like, when I was young, I used to
Right.
look at things in real life, like as if you have to do that anymore. It's like, well, screen's fine.
I know.
don't-
And the looks you get back, especially now that I have Zoom, and if I tell any stories, I'm like, oh God, I sound like an old lady. I can just see them just not like processing any information. Like, here we go, another story.
The Zoom glaze.
Right. So
It's
I'm
like,
trying
yeah,
to
whatever.
sound, up to date and relevant, but I want them to know that it is important to have both. You can be high tech, but you also have to get out there and engage in real life. And if anything, COVID might be teaching people a lot about, now that families are stuck in these spaces together, not able to get out. I mean, one of my best friends, she was like, wow, we're actually eating at the dinner table together, and it's really nice. And their kids are acting, their behavior is better. I mean, everyone's connecting in that case. I mean, I know it's very stressful for families, especially with younger children, and the homeschooling and all of that. But I feel like maybe it is, all the things I complain about for the younger people, like not engaging, just always being disconnected and on their devices. I think maybe less of that is happening because now they want to get out and engage, and they might see the importance of that now that there's lack thereof.
One can hope. I mean, that's the optimistic view.
It is.
Or they could just be like, not on the computer all the time and never wanting to date again and just like fetishizing, like, whatever it is online that's not real life. Yeah. But then, like, in a global pandemic too, it's hard to be like, get out there and go rub elbows with people.
Yeah, but I'm talking about the yearning now. Like, I think with my students, like before it was like all on the devices or interacting with each other. Like, I've seen two students who are sitting across from each other and texting each other or whatever. They're communicating on the device, and they're like 1 foot away from each other. Whereas now there's a yearning for physical contact. They want hugs now, and they want, and it's not, and probably less of this. It might eliminate that kind of thing across from each other. And now, like, well, let's just hug and actually look at each other and talk to. I don't know. Maybe I am overly optimistic, but I feel like I've seen some kind of yearning for that, which I didn't see before.
I hope. I mean, we're in the beta phase. Like, this is the first go at, it's not the first time there's been a pandemic or like an issue like that, but it's the first time with our kind of connectivity and, with technology and all that stuff, which totally, morphs the socialization of the human race in a way. Like, it's conducted completely differently now than it was 100 years ago. So who knows, like, how this is, having like a young kid, like, maybe it's kind of all going to be the same as it was when I was a kid, just slightly different. You know, I remember when I was young and I was watching TV, and my parents would be like, "That TV is going to destroy you." It was
right.
It's going to be, you're going to turn into this or that, and it's like, no, I just watch TV sometimes, and I don't even watch TV anymore. Really, it's just like stuff online once in a while. We got rid of basic, any cable or any of that stuff. So who knows how it's gonna. I mean, it's hard because you can only predict what the effect that this is going to have conditional upon like our current situation. Right. But who knows what it's going to be like in 20 to 40 years, the structure of society, it might be completely different. Yeah.
I certainly think that's what's happening. There's a
good thing we're making pictures.
You know what? I think we are in the right profession.
That might not change.
No. I mean, I hope people will start to appreciate what we do even more. But I do have a student in one of my drawing classes, and it didn't faze him at all to ask me if he could just make digital drawings the entire semester. And I was like, you're taking drawing 2, and we have charcoal and graphite and erasers and paper and digital. Maybe you can do that for your final project. But it made me pause. I was like, is this the transition that's going to start happening, where I'm going to be, accepting digital artists in my drawing class?
I'm teaching digital painting this semester.
Oh, wow. Well, see, you're a digital class.
It's specific to that.
Yeah, it's specific to that. But I'm wondering, if things will transition to that, where it'll be a mix for a drawing class, not a digital drawing. Like digital drawing will be accepted as part of the general drawing pantheon. It's like,
I think generally it will, what I mean? But the reason I'm excited to teach this course is because I'm trying to inject more of the analog fine art realm into the digital medium, where I think by default it goes towards like character design and all that other stuff. I'm trying to like get the other side into it just as equally as the manga or the cartoons or whatever. Most people who are drawn to digital media come in from that door.
Exactly.
So I'm trying to inject the other side of it, and so far it's been great. I'm hoping that there can be like a nice combination of the two things. I think it
should be. I don't think one should be phased out. God help us all if drawing with a charcoal is considered passé, or paint.
It never will. It never will.
Brush. Yeah, that I believe will always stay.
It's the same fear every time, right? Because like when the Kindle came out, people were like, but books are great.
Yeah.
As if like they're not going to be made anymore.
Right.
People still read books, but they also, if they're flying on a plane, they might not want to carry around 20 pounds of books with them.
True.
And if they can bring this little thing, it makes it a lot easier. So I think, yes, the new media is a part of art making and a part of artwork, but it's not going to take over any of the other versions of it. It'll just be part of the dialogue.
I think when something's new like that, though, and you see the convenience of it versus, carrying 800 books around, there is a real fear that it'll wipe out, that tactile book holding experience, the desire to have that experience. But now, as we all see, both coexist very well. And maybe one becomes that convenient device when you are traveling, and maybe it's only for that, while you have a big library of books in your home,
Right. Well, I think that the gap between, reading a book and reading a book on a Kindle is less broad than, making a drawing on an iPad and making a drawing in real life, because the materiality is so much more malleable. Yeah. There's a nostalgia with books in the sense that like the smell, the touch, and that's real, but you're not making words, you're just reading it. Right. You know what I mean? Whereas opposed to making a drawing, it's a physical activity. Right. So there's a broader gap there that I think people, if you really love drawing on, a tablet, it's probably comes from drawing as a kid. Like there's the root of drawing there that you'll probably want to go back to.
Well, I was just going to ask that. Do you think that kids who prefer digital drawing, if they come from that history of actually the tactile experience of holding a utensil and drawing on something on paper, do they have that experience first, or do you find that most of them just dive right in, start just with the digital?
Well, I'm like comforted by, even doing the podcast and just talking to artists, just how many people analog draw as like a young, like child. You know what I mean? I think it's just rooted in our, I don't know, there's something just like all kids will just take crayons and draw.
I wonder.
And I don't, but yeah, I guess nowadays maybe more kids are getting an iPad shoved in their face.
Right. So what if the younger people, that's how they start? They don't know about crayons anymore or pencils. It's all about that device that they start working with.
Yeah, I guess the romantic in me feels that it will never go away, because the foundation of analog drawing is it's basically the crux of like, painting and making, and even sculpture, of just like playing around with objects and stuff. I do think, yes, there will be more of a migration into new media just because it's such the landscape of what people do, but I don't think it will ever knock out, the traditional media. I think the traditional media might be less intense as it used to be. But I would argue that it's kind of probably doing that anyways with the amount of time human beings in general are spending on technology. So if you are, let's say like it used to be as a kid, 30% drawing, 70%, playing out or doing whatever else. Now it might be, 10% drawing and like 90% watching TV on the iPad, playing videos. Might as well at least have more time doing something creative on that technology, like drawing or animating or video or whatever. So at least you're still in the creative process.
That's right.
Because the tools change, fundamentally, but the creative process is the process,
Yeah.
There's probably a lot of writers who still bring out the old typewriter. Yeah. You know what I mean? And or just write it on paper, and there's a beauty to that, and something happens.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I have to have a yellow pad, and I have to cut, and I'm like an artist when I'm like a studio artist when I'm writing, because I'll write it out and then I don't edit, like I would, which would be so much easier if I would just write everything on my laptop. But no, I've got to be in this yellow pad, cutting it and pasting it, like literally cutting and pasting, arranging these pieces until it all comes together. It looks like a collage piece, because that's how I learned. So it's still with me. I mean, I'm not I love the idea of the typewriter, but that thing was a pain in the butt, before they had the corrective paper. So when I was in college, they didn't have the corrective paper. So if you made a mistake, you had to rip the thing out and start all over again. And then a God from above blessed us with the erasable paper. So you just erase the little A that you made the typo, and it would save you a lot of time. So yeah, I'm still not feeling the love for the typewriter, but I wasn't really well skilled with typing anyway. So that's one thing that I'm happy to see go, and happy to upgrade.
Yeah, the evolution, it would be interesting to diagram the evolution of like spell check, of like where it used to be you would have to like go back, like you're saying, like do that, and then at a certain point it was computers and a little paper clip would pop up and he'd be like, hey, you sure you want an apostrophe there? And then you'd hit close, like get out of there. And then it became like, before you even think of it, the word's there, right? Like you probably mean this word, which is really weird.
I need to work my brain though, because I remember, so we had the typewriter, no spell check on any of this. You had your dictionary that you actually had to leaf through and make sure you got that right. And then there was this, I think it was called a word processor that came out, and that was like the speedy typewriter. So the computer started to inch into the typing experience. And then, in college, they had this computer room. There were like 5 gigantic computers. And there are like 20 geeks in there every week, like, new technology. But we were all no one was really visiting that room much. And then, of course, boom, all of a sudden we have these computers, and now they do all the work for you. And it's very invasive for me. It's so easy. I was like, God, the convenience of this, I don't have to check my spelling on it. But now I don't know how to spell as many words that the spell check helps me spell, because I don't have to retain that information. It's being done for me. So I actually took it off 2 of my devices, and I'm like, oh, this is so hard. I got to go look it up, but now I retain it. It's like GPS too, or MapQuest. I don't program any of that stuff. I will get lost. And I learn the hard way, but now I know how to get somewhere. All these different locations where I'm driving, I'll have a memory of it because I was actually looking and trying to find it, rather than, Waze telling me, take a left here. I have no memory of how I got there when I do that.
See, I think we're just a product of our environment, though, because that's the way that you learned it. Right. And I think if you took a young kid and forced them to live that way, they would be good at, going off the grid or whatever, but so much of their life now is part of that technological structure that they would be illiterate in that, and they would be even more screwed than if they were lost with, with not knowing what a compass is.
Yeah, no, I mean, those were my formative years, are different from people younger in the way I learn and process information and retain information. And maybe we all come out the same in the end, but for me, if someone starts doing stuff for me, then I'm lost, I think in the wider span of life, I have to do everything for myself in order to get it done, in order to achieve something. So that's just the way it is, generational, and how we learn, how we pick up information and process it.
Definitely. With your so you have a studio in the city.
I do.
Do you have a studio in the country as well?
Not really. I've kind of turned a little space into a studio. I did a show in that space. 2019, I had a show at Lesley Heller, and I just wanted to get out of the city. And they were smaller canvases, but there's not proper lighting. It didn't have a lot of space. I couldn't be messy. So really, my studio is in Brooklyn, and I love my large scale. I can mess up the floor. I need to feel like I'm free to mess things up. It's a little small. I'm actually eyeballing a bigger space downstairs, but of course more expensive. But I'm wondering, space is important too. Like this space has so much more wall space, and there are things like I can hang a lot more. And I'm wondering how that will affect my work at large. Like will it improve? when I can do what I naturally like to do, like working on several large pieces at once. Rather, now I'm able to only do two at once. But I'm debating it because I have a slop sink in my space, and the one downstairs doesn't walk down the hall to the bathroom.
Could be a deal breaker.
It could be. I'm doing the pros and cons list right now. But yeah.
But you didn't have the temptation of, like, I don't know what your place is like out of the city, but that fantasy of having like a giant studio, like just a big rectangle.
That's my goal
on the land.
That's my goal. I'm actually house hunting for such a space where I can have like an extra structure where I can just walk from my house to this huge barn studio. So that's what I'm looking for right now.
Yeah, because the space, I mean, when you get out of the city, that's the whole perk, right? It's like, okay, you can get some space.
Exactly. So that's the goal. I mean, I still want to have a base in the city, but I just, now I'm at that stage, in my life where I just want to settle in somewhere, be 75% there, the rest of the time here. Plus I need to be in the city, make contact with, the New York art scene. You got to kind of stay close to that. But at some point, they'll want to come see me if I'm not there,
Yeah, totally.
Not there yet, but yeah, also I can paint outside. I love that. Like when we were at Skowhegan, did you paint outside? I know that I painted outside. I brought my big canvases out and I was pouring shellac. The next day I'd have all these ants in my shellac.
Oh, yeah.
I was like, okay, cool.
It's rustic.
Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't work outside because I had the cow pasture right next to me. So I didn't have there's a lot of space there, but it was like cows.
Yes.
But I definitely drew outside and spent a lot of time like hanging out.
It is nice to have that option to go outside. You don't have that in the city.
Yeah, I mean the fantasy of having like an upstate. I know some people who have like giant studios.
Yeah.
It's just the quiet of that. I think also going through this whole experience. Obviously, a lot of people are getting out of the city and
they
getting
are
other places because you need some space.
Well, it's funny because now I just see lots of New York license plates in my little rural town where I grew up. What are you guys doing here? Nobody's out here. Now you're from New York. Everyone's buying houses. People are fleeing to their Hamptons homes and, leaving the city. I love the city. I wouldn't want to leave the city, but I do. That's my dream, is have that house and the big studio. It's also nice that the commute would be out the door just like a couple of feet to my feet,
that'd be amazing,
rather than the bridge and tunnel commute that I have now.
Yeah. Yeah, the 50-yard walk through the grass with a hot cup of coffee, and you walk into that giant space, and it's just you have all the space you need.
I know. I'm
pretty dreamy.
So jealous of the older artists who were, had those huge Soho lofts, and then they got their country homes for like $50,000, and then you see them now like in their 80s, and they have this gorgeous big studio they're painting in.
Yeah.
And it's just like, I wish I was coming up during those days when it seemed to be cheaper to attain.
I'm sure it was a little rougher. They probably paid for it one way.
Yeah, they
another.
did. It just looks so good now at this stage of their lives.
Yeah, any real estate choice like that is a good look.
It really is.
You get in early on.
Exactly. Now, you look at country homes and they're like $500,000 for one bedroom.
I know, it's crazy.
Oof.
They're like, we know you guys want something out here, and we're gonna charge you for it.
Yes, exactly. Oh, girl can dream.
Yeah. Well, so can you talk a little bit about the show that it opens tonight, right?
Yes, it's called.
Well, when this comes out, it'll be probably a week ago, but yeah.
Yeah, it's called Paradise Island at Stephen Harvey Fine Art Projects. And it's a group show, and Stephen informed me that it was inspired by the island of the Amazons, of course, fictional. And this is apparently where Wonder Woman was born. So it's all women, as it turns out. And I guess we're all the Amazons from Paradise Island. The Selected Amazons by Stephen Harvey. And I had to look up a few names that I wasn't familiar with all the artists, but there are artists whose work I love, like Megan Brady. Really love her work. Never.
Speaking of big studio outside the city.
Oh, really?
She's in Maine.
Oh gosh, yeah. I hate everybody who has that. And even Meg Lipke, who I just showed with at Gold Scopophilia in New Jersey. I just saw it. She just posted her. I've been meaning to visit her in Ghent, New York, and she has an amazing looking studio. And I was like, that's what I want. So I can't wait to visit her because she posted an image on Instagram and it just looks heavenly. It looks like she built it herself.
It's not fair. People flexing their beautiful spaces outside the city when we're locked down. It's brutal.
I know. Thank you.
How dare you? They're like, oh, yeah, you think New York is so special? Look at me.
I know. Hey, hate you all. Love you. Love you. But yeah, so this is a group show. It's a kind of a big number of artists, and I don't know how. I mean, it's the miracle of Stephen knowing his small space and how to work it. But I have one small painting, which is 11 by 11 inches, and then he saw me. But this is the magic of Instagram. Sometimes, is that he saw this post, and I posted a painting from 1997. And he loved it. And he's like, hey, can I have that too? And it's like 6 by 6 feet. I'm like, where is this going to hang in a show with like 20 artists? But he's figuring it out. He's like, we make it happen. So those two paintings are in the show.
That's so cool. It's a 24-year gap, right?
Yeah.
If my math isn't completely bogus. Well, does the work resonate? Like, how do you feel about
it was back. When I was in grad school, I was focusing on Black stereotypes, and I was collecting, all of these figurines of grotesque Black stereotypes. The imagery a lot of it was terrible, and some of it was made for, advertising. So once again, we're into that realm of flatness, and how that kind of imagery really was created to draw you in, to be a quick attraction. So I was making these paintings with this cartoon imagery. Everything was sort of outlined in black. And this one painting is these two little girls, white girls, and I think I got it from a coloring book or a fairy tale book, and I just projected that image, drew it in black outline, and then I have these Black stereotypes like kind of mixed in this soup of paint. Now that's still my signature, the dripping and the shellac and collage overlay. So that's there, but this is different because I'm using representational imagery. And now I basically have wiped that all out because I got tired of researching stereotypes. It was depressing. So back in the 90s, it was kind of the thing. A lot of Black artists were exploring that. And so that's what I was trying to set up, like they're lost. And the title of the painting is There's No Place Like Home. So they're lost. There's the fear of Black people, and there's the innocence of these children who have probably been socialized to see Black as evil and negative. So I had that juxtaposition of the Black stereotypes and then these little girls. So that's the painting that Stephen loved for this show. I don't know how it ties in with me being an Amazon, but yeah, it's interesting because these two paintings do have recognizable objects in them. One has nature, and so they pair well together. Plus the little painting I started in 2010. I thought I was done. I was organizing my studio, found it, and I was like, no, I can do some more with this. And I just finished it last year. It's the only canvas painting that I made in 2020.
Wow.
Everything else was works on paper. I made 30 works on paper, but that's because I was at home making these works on paper at home. But yeah, that's the only 2020 painting.
So that's two pieces that are pretty enigmatic.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean,
in the lineage of what you're working on. I mean, it's such a big gap, and then there's like tweaks to the, what you've been working on in a way. So it'll be interesting to see those things together.
I know. I think they actually work well together. It's so strange to go back. I mean, I posted the image on Instagram, I think, about 2 months ago. And I had been back in the country. I was looking through storage and I found it. And it was like right when I moved to New York after grad school, because I went to Berkeley. So I was out in California. Then I moved back here and things picked up really fast. People loved the stereotype paintings. Unfortunately for me, because I was like, if I see one more black face, if I see one more black man being like whipped in the middle of town watched by white people, it was depressing. I know there are people who can go right into the trenches and stick with that, but it wore out fast for me. I was feeling like a low grade funk having to see that all the time. So I clearly am too sensitive for it to delve into it. I want to know what's happening in the world, but I have to take breaks from, I can't do news every day. I have to take news breaks. I have to do that stuff because I absorb everything and it stays there,
Definitely.
So that's why with work, painting, I want to be a refuge, but I also want it to be a place where I can channel whatever I'm feeling. And that's why I like to leave it open-ended and not focus so much on the figure or some kind of representational imagery, because then I can be free to just let whatever it is out, with paint, with the action of painting. But I am yearning for a little representational nature to come back into it. Maybe it is COVID, being cooped up and then taking breaks in the country.
Yeah, it's, and these things in work, I think, become cyclical, but they take on a new life when they come around the second time,
Yeah.
When you sort of tap back into things, it's kind of, I think it's an organic part of the creative process, But at the end of the day, like when you were saying it looks, they look good together. It's like what we were saying earlier. I mean, it's you made it. Even there's that gap there, it's all coming from that. The authorship ideally would be, would resonate no matter if it's, I look at stuff that I did, 25 years ago and, I guess you could be like, well, it hasn't changed that much. That's depressing. Or you could be like, well, it has, but they've been small change, and it makes sense, but it definitely feels different. And, you come back to certain ideas and it's different the second time around in a way.
It is. I was just happy to see that there was still some connection to what I'm doing now. Like you can still see my signature in there, which I hadn't thought through, it was just there. It was kind of cool to see that. But I also feel that COVID work is looking more focused for me. I don't know. I think the work is becoming a little bit more complex. I just have all that time. We all have this time in these enclosed spaces. I don't know if that's affecting your work or not, but it's changed mine. Also because I have more time to work on things. So yeah, it's helping me in a way. That's
great.
I'm wondering,
I think it affects people differently too. Like, I was definitely during the shutdown when it was like full on lockdown, I was making a lot of work at home because, small work on paper. But then like as things open up, at the same time, like my kid doesn't go to school. He's at school at home all day. Like, so you have time, but then it's weird because that time gets sucked up in a different way. Yeah. And I'm not getting to my studio as much as I normally do. Like I'm working at home, but it's a different kind of working pace,
Right.
So a lot of times I'll go after dinner to the studio and work late into the night, and that's a whole different animal. So, it's just a different play out in a way.
It is. No, I mean, if you have family, then you have to really compartmentalize your time. And I don't, and I have, so time for me is like, oh, now I'm not in my car half the day. That's time for me that I can just do my paintings. Or like in 2018 to 19, I had a crazy show schedule, which was unexpected. And I hadn't had anything prepared. So I was making all this work for each show. Some people would contact me like a week before the show, and I would be like making a painting and thinking, is this done? I don't know. I'm lost. I don't know how to gauge how this looks. And some of that work I'm looking at and I'm like, I really need to go back into that. Like I just felt so rushed. And that's because I work slowly. And I like to work slowly. I like to take my time looking at things, but you can't always just enjoy that slow time. If you're a professional, you gotta have your stuff ready to go, especially, if it's a good opportunity, you're going to make that work and you're going to be rushing.
Yeah, definitely. You just have to, you don't wait around for inspiration.
Yeah. That's the romantic, expectation of art is that, we just have all this time and all this. I mean, I call them my civilian friends, my non-art friends, and they just think, oh, can we come over and have some drinks and just hang out? I'm like, do you want me to come to your job and bring some drinks?
Right. Hang out in the office.
Yeah, exactly. Would you like me to do that? This is not what I do. This is not what it's like you see in the movies.
Yeah. So. Yeah, it's pretty far from that, to be honest.
It really is.
For sure.
And we're not guaranteed sales. So you put all that time in there. It's like, maybe it won't even sell after 3 months working on this thing, 8 hours a day,
Might have all been pro bono. We don't we don't know for sure.
We certainly don't. We are crazy.
It's like, you might just be working for free. Oh well, it's for the love of it.
For the love of it, the passion.
For sure.
Yes.
Well, so the show is going to be open tonight. That's going to be up for I'm gathering a month.
So it's open from today, February 17th. It's not a physical opening. Nobody's going to be showing up. We're probably going to do a Zoom thing. But it closes March 20th. So just slightly over a month. Yeah.
Listen, I've been to openings to that space. That is not a social distance opening situation. No. I've been in there and it's taken me 20 minutes to get from the back to the front door. It was so crowded.
Yeah, no, people love to show up at those openings. And I just thought, this is my first time showing there. And I thought, I don't know. I hope Steven doesn't expect us to show up because I will be outside in the middle of the street just like doing a drive-by,
You can get one of those bubbles that they do, those bubble bumper things. Just roll into the opening with that.
Yeah, I appreciate being in the show, but I am
actually be pretty great.
Yeah, I'm a germaphobe too already of that. So I was so happy when they told me it wasn't going to be a physical opening, but the gallery will be open, so people should stop by.
Most definitely. Yeah. And then if they can also follow your work on Instagram, that's probably the best place. Right?
Oh yeah.
Or your website.
I have a website too. Both,
so.
Yeah. So. And
just your name for both.
Yeah, it's for Instagram. It's Erika with a K .Ranee RANEE, and then my website is www.erikaraneealtogether.com.
And should they follow your burner account, which is Erika Ornithology? at Erika Ornithology. Doing bird
setting
calls?
That up. That will be my third account. I don't know. Yeah, I am totally turning into Bird Lady. Oh, there's this one artist that I follow, and she takes the best photographs. I forgot her name. She shows.
Oh, I think I know who you're talking about.
Shows with Nicole Bushin, I think.
Yeah. Oh man.
She has. I'm like, how did she get that close to that red-headed woodpecker?
Some of them too look like Sears portraits. That's amazing. It's like, oh, there's the family shot of the parrots. That's pretty great.
Oh, I love it. I think she's up in Vermont or Maine or somewhere, but I'm like, gee, she's out in deep in those woods getting these great close-ups. But yeah, I'm a bird lady. That's just tell me that.
I'm into birds too.
Yeah.
Well, I had a great time talking, and it was so nice to meet you. Yeah. And maybe one day we can go to an opening, like a real one.
I would love that. In real life, as I'm learning, IRL.
IRL, yeah.
Oh, so
cool.
great to
well, thanks so
you,
much.
Brian.
Yeah, it's great to meet you. Vision is recorded, edited, and produced by myself, Brian Alfred. Many thanks to Erika for taking the time to speak with me. Thanks to Lullitone for the intro-outro music and Michael Lovett for the introduction. Check out Sound of Vision podcast on iTunes and please leave a rating and review if you can take the time. It really helps. Also available on Spotify, Google Play, and all the other platforms. You can check out images at Sound of Vision podcast on Instagram. And if you can, take a moment to tell a friend or someone you think might be into it. Share or spread the word. Share it with other people. Many thanks for you guys for listening.